In a world dominated by distraction, where the average person's attention span has dwindled to seconds, and where emotional reactivity dictates most human behavior, there exists a philosophical framework that stands as the ultimate countermeasure. A mental operating system so powerful that those who truly internalize it gain an almost unfair advantage in every domain of life. This isn't about positive thinking or temporary motivation. This is about rewiring your neural pathways at their most fundamental level. Creating a mind that processes reality with crystal clarity, remains unmoved by the chaos that paralyzes others, and maintains unwavering focus on what truly matters. The ancient Greeks and Romans discovered this mental framework over 2,000 years ago. It was the operating system of emperors, generals, statesmen, and the most formidable minds throughout history. Today, it powers the decision-making of elite military operators, world-class athletes, business titans, and anyone who understands that true power begins and ends with mastery of the mind. This is Stoicism, not as a dusty academic pursuit, but as a most practical philosophy ever developed for becoming mentally unbeatable. The Stoics weren't theorizing in ivory towers. They were testing their ideas in the most challenging circumstances imaginable: war, exile, imprisonment, and the brutal realities of ancient life. What follows is not just information. It's complete reprogramming of how you perceive the world and your place in it. Internalize these principles, and you'll develop a mind that's immune to manipulation, resistant to distraction, and capable of maintaining perfect clarity under conditions that break ordinary people. Part 1. The foundations of Stoic thinking. The dichotomy of control, the core principle that changes everything. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies a deceptively simple insight that, when fully grasped, immediately eliminates 90% of unnecessary suffering and wasted mental energy. This is the dichotomy of control. The recognition that some things are within our control, and some things are not, with absolutely nothing in between. As Epictetus, a former slave who became one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, wrote in his Enchiridion, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, reputation, office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. This isn't merely a clever observation. It's the foundation of mental clarity and emotional resilience. The average person spends most of their life in a state of frustration, anxiety, and disappointment because they're constantly trying to control what cannot be controlled. They rage against traffic, worry about other people's opinions, and become despondent when the weather ruins their plans. The Stoic mind immediately recognizes this error and refuses to waste a single moment of mental energy on what lies outside their sphere of influence. Instead, they direct all their attention to what they can control: their judgment, their actions, their values, and their responses. This doesn't mean becoming passive or fatalistic. Quite the opposite. By focusing exclusively on what you can control, you maximize your actual power while eliminating the drain of pointless worry and frustration. Your mental energy is finite and precious. The Stoic ensures none of it is wasted on the uncontrollable. Consider two people facing the same challenge: a major project with a tight deadline. The average person worries about whether their work will be well received, whether unforeseen obstacles will arise, and whether their efforts will ultimately pay off. The Stoic concerns themselves only with the quality of their effort, the integrity of their process, and the alignment of their work with their values. The first person depletes their mental resources with anxiety about outcomes beyond their control. The second channels all their energy into what they can actually influence. This simple shift in focus creates an immediate and profound competitive advantage. While others exhaust themselves fighting against reality, the Stoic conserves their mental resources for effective action. Their mind remains clear when others become clouded, focused when others become scattered, and powerful when others become depleted. But the dichotomy of control goes deeper still. It reveals that the most valuable things in life, your character, your integrity, your peace of mind, are completely within your control. The Stoics understood that true wealth isn't measured in external possessions, which can be taken away, but in internal qualities that are invulnerable to fortune. As Seneca, advisor to emperors and one of Rome's greatest Stoic philosophers, wrote, "The wise man regards the reason for all his actions, but not the results." This mental position, focusing on the process rather than the outcome, creates unshakable peace of mind. The Stoic can pursue ambitious goals without attaching their sense of success or well-being to factors beyond their control. Premeditatio malorum, the Stoic art of negative visualization. While modern self-help gurus preach endless positivity, the Stoics understood a counterintuitive truth. The path to mental strength isn't through avoiding negative thoughts, but through deliberately confronting them in a controlled, strategic way. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils, involves regularly contemplating the worst outcomes you might face, not to induce anxiety, but to eliminate it through preparation and perspective. As Seneca advised, he who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. By regularly visualizing potential setbacks, failures, and even catastrophes, you rob them of their ability to destabilize you when they actually occur. You've already faced them in your mind and determined your response. This practice builds what modern psychologists call anti-fragility, the quality of not merely withstanding difficulty, but actually becoming stronger through exposure to it. When you've mentally rehearsed losing your job, facing public criticism, or dealing with a health crisis, these events lose their power to emotionally devastate you. Contrast this with the fragility of the untrained mind. The person who never contemplates difficulties is utterly unprepared when they arrive. They're shocked, overwhelmed, and often make catastrophic decisions from a place of panic and confusion. The Stoic, having regularly faced these possibilities in their mind, responds with calm clarity even in crisis. They've already processed the emotional shock in a controlled environment and developed response strategies. This mental preparation creates an unshakable confidence that's impossible to fake. Negative visualization also serves another crucial function. It generates profound gratitude and appreciation for what you currently have. By regularly contemplating the loss of your health, relationships, or opportunities, you break through the adaptation that normally blinds you to their value. As Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, reminded himself, "Do not indulge in dreams of having what you have not, but reckon up the chief of the blessings you do possess, and then thankfully remember how you would crave for them if they were not yours." This practice creates a mind that simultaneously prepares for the worst while deeply appreciating the present, a psychological position of immense strength that very few people ever achieve. Amor fati, the ultimate mental advantage. The pinnacle of Stoic mental strength is found in the concept of amor fati, the love of fate. This isn't mere acceptance of what happens. It's the active embrace of everything that occurs, including hardships and setbacks, as necessary and beneficial components of your life. As Epictetus taught, don't seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. This attitude represents the ultimate psychological advantage. The average person wastes enormous energy fighting against reality, wishing things were different, and dwelling on how they've been wronged. The Stoic not only accepts reality, but embraces it as exactly what they need to become stronger and wiser. Friedrich Nietzsche, deeply influenced by Stoicism, described this mindset as not merely bearing what is necessary, still less concealing it, but loving it. This isn't resignation or passivity. It's the recognition that the obstacle is the way, that difficulties are precisely what develop your capabilities. Consider how this transforms your experience of adversity. When you face a challenge, rather than asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How can I use this to become better?" This simple reframing changes everything. Adversity is no longer something to be avoided or resented, but appreciated as essential to your development. Marcus Aurelius expressed this perfectly. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every obstacle properly utilized becomes a stepping stone. Every setback properly framed becomes an opportunity for growth. This mindset creates individuals who are literally unstoppable. Since they view obstacles not as barriers, but as the path itself, nothing can deter them from their purpose. While others become discouraged by difficulties, the Stoic becomes energized by them, recognizing them as the exact conditions needed to develop greatness. Part 2. Mastering your perceptions. The gap between stimulus and response. The most consequential discovery of Stoic philosophy is that events themselves have no inherent meaning or emotional content. It is our judgments about events, not the events themselves, that determine our experience. As Epictetus stated with characteristic directness, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take on them. This insight reveals that the power to shape your emotional experience lies entirely within your control. The untrained mind reacts immediately to external events, creating no separation between what happens and how they feel about it. Someone criticizes them, and they instantly feel angry or hurt. They face a setback, and they immediately feel frustrated or discouraged. They encounter an opportunity, and they automatically feel excited or anxious. The Stoic mind operates differently. It creates a gap between stimulus and response, a space of conscious awareness where judgments can be examined before being accepted. This gap may only be milliseconds, but it makes all the difference in the world. In this gap lies your freedom. Here, you can examine the judgment your mind is proposing and decide whether to accept it. Is this criticism really worthy of your anger? Is this setback truly as devastating as it appears? Is this opportunity really as essential as it seems? Viktor Frankl, deeply influenced by Stoic philosophy, described this capacity during his time in Nazi concentration camps. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This ability to question your initial judgments before accepting them grants enormous power. You're no longer at the mercy of automatic reactions. You regain sovereignty over your mental landscape. While others are jerked around by their unexamined judgments, you maintain composure and clarity. This isn't about suppressing emotions, but about ensuring they arise from accurate judgments rather than distorted ones. The Stoic doesn't aim to feel nothing. They aim to feel appropriately based on clear perception. To develop this capacity, the Stoics practiced continuous self-questioning. When a negative emotion arose, they would immediately ask, what judgment am I making that's causing this feeling? Is this judgment accurate and helpful? Is the thing I'm upset about truly within my control? This constant examination of judgments creates a mind that's increasingly resistant to distortion and reactivity. You become less manipulable, less triggered, and more grounded in reality rather than in your interpretations of it. Cognitive distancing, the art of objective observation. The Stoics developed a practice that modern psychologists now recognize as one of the most powerful cognitive techniques available. The ability to mentally step back and observe your thoughts rather than being caught up in them. Marcus Aurelius described this practice. Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are and to make new things like them. This capacity to observe your own mind with detachment creates what modern psychology calls cognitive distance, the ability to separate yourself from your thoughts and examine them objectively. This distance is essential for clear thinking. The untrained mind fully identifies with its thoughts. I am angry, or I am anxious feels like a total state of being rather than a temporary mental phenomenon. The Stoic mind recognizes, I am experiencing thoughts and feelings of anger, or I notice anxiety arising in my mind, a crucial distinction that creates freedom. This observational stance allows you to see thoughts as passing mental events rather than absolute truths. From this position, you can examine their accuracy, usefulness, and origin without being swept away by them. The Stoics developed this capacity through disciplined self-reflection. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations exemplifies this practice, a private journal where he observed his own mental patterns with ruthless honesty and detachment. By writing down his thoughts and examining them, he created distance from them. This skill is particularly valuable in emotionally charged situations. When others are caught in the grip of anger, fear, or excitement, the Stoic can step back, observe the emotional current passing through them, and choose whether to be carried away by it or to maintain their position. Modern research confirms what the Stoics intuited. This observational stance significantly reduces emotional reactivity and improves decision-making. By observing your thoughts rather than identifying with them, you gain the ability to select which ones deserve your full attention and which should be allowed to pass without engagement. This constant practice of stepping back and observing creates a mind that's increasingly spacious and clear. You become less dense with identification and reaction, more open to perceiving reality as it actually is rather than as your conditioned mind presents it. The practice of objective description. The Stoics developed an exercise that seems simple but has profound effects on mental clarity. Describing events in purely objective terms, stripped of all evaluation and emotional coloring. Epictetus instructed, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." This practice of turning inward and examining your own judgments reveals how much emotional distress comes not from events themselves but from the evaluations you add to them. The exercise works like this. When something upsets you, describe the event in the most neutral, objective terms possible. Instead of "he disrespected me in front of everyone," you might say, "he expressed a different opinion than mine during the meeting." Instead of "this traffic is ruining my day," you might say, "the cars are moving at approximately 15 miles per hour." This practice reveals the enormous gap between the bare facts of a situation and the elaborate interpretations your mind adds to them. Most suffering occurs in this gap in the stories, judgments, and evaluations that go far beyond the observable reality. Marcus Aurelius practiced this regularly. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This skill has enormous practical value. In high-pressure situations where emotions run hot, the person who can strip away interpretation and see the bare facts has a decisive advantage. While others react to their own stories about what's happening, the Stoic responds to reality itself. The practice also reveals how much of your emotional suffering is self-generated. When you describe situations objectively, you often discover there's nothing in the bare facts that justifies your distress. This insight doesn't invalidate your feelings, but it does give you the power to choose whether they're serving you well. With consistent practice, this habit of objective description becomes automatic. Your mind naturally distinguishes between facts and interpretations, giving you the option to accept or reject the interpretations rather than being unconsciously ruled by them. Part 3. Developing unshakable emotional resilience. Voluntary discomfort. The path to emotional invulnerability. The Stoics understood what modern psychology has confirmed. Comfort is the enemy of resilience. The more you avoid discomfort, the more psychologically fragile you become. The more you voluntarily embrace discomfort, the more emotionally resilient you grow. Seneca, despite being one of Rome's wealthiest men, regularly practiced voluntary hardship, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" This practice of deliberately experiencing discomfort serves multiple purposes. First, it inoculates you against fear of hardship. When you voluntarily experienced cold, hunger, physical exertion, social rejection, or public criticism, these things lose their power to intimidate you. Second, it builds confidence in your ability to handle difficulties. Each time you voluntarily embrace discomfort and discover you can endure it, you strengthen your belief in your resilience. This self-trust becomes invaluable when you face involuntary challenges. Third, it breaks the modern addiction to comfort that makes so many people psychologically weak. When your well-being depends on maintaining perfect comfort, you become vulnerable to manipulation and easily discouraged by obstacles. The Stoic regularly practices voluntary discomfort in various forms, fasting from food, exposing themselves to cold, engaging in strenuous physical activity, attempting difficult mental challenges, or deliberately seeking social situations that cause anxiety. This isn't masochism or self-punishment. It's strategic exposure to build psychological strength, just as physical training deliberately exposes muscles to stress to make them stronger. Modern research confirms the effectiveness of this approach. Studies on hormesis, beneficial stress, show that controlled exposure to stressors strengthens biological systems. What the Stoics intuited applies not just to the mind, but to the body as well. Appropriate stress, followed by recovery, builds resilience. The practical application of this principle creates individuals who are extraordinarily difficult to intimidate or control. When you've regularly faced discomfort by choice, very few threats can coerce you. When you voluntarily experience privation, you're free from the fear of loss that controls most people's decisions. As Seneca observed, it is not the man who is too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. By practicing voluntary discomfort, you break the psychological dependency on comfort that keeps most people in a state of quiet desperation and compliance. The view from above, perspective as power. The Stoics developed a contemplative exercise that instantly dissolves petty concerns and realigns your focus on what truly matters. This practice, known as the view from above, involves mentally stepping back to view your situation from progressively wider perspectives. Marcus Aurelius described it this way: think of the whole universe of matter and how small your share. Think about the expanse of time and how brief, almost momentary, the part marked for you. Think of the workings of fate and how infinitesimal your role. This isn't meant to diminish your significance, but to liberate you from the prison of narrow self-concern. When you mentally zoom out to view your situation from the perspective of your entire life, then from the perspective of all humanity, then from the cosmic perspective, petty worries and grievances naturally fall away. This practice creates immediate psychological relief from the intensity of in-the-moment concerns. The promotion you're anxious about, the criticism that stung, the opportunity you missed, viewed from a wider perspective. These shrink to their true significance. But this isn't just a trick to feel better. It's a way to access clearer thinking. When caught in the grip of immediate concerns, your perspective narrows and your thinking becomes constricted. By mentally stepping back, you create space for wiser, more expansive thought. This practice also generates profound gratitude. When you contemplate the vastness of space and time and the extraordinary circumstances that led to your existence, the miracle of being alive at all becomes apparent. Your concerns shift from what you lack to the wonder of what you have. The view from above has practical applications in decision-making as well. When choosing between options, mentally projecting yourself to the end of your life and looking back can clarify which choice aligns with your deeper values. Many decisions that seem important in the moment reveal themselves as trivial from this expanded perspective. Part 7. The Stoic Legacy and Your Path Forward. The historical impact of Stoic philosophy. The influence of Stoic philosophy extends far beyond the ancient world, shaping some of history's most consequential figures and movements. Understanding this legacy reveals the enduring power of these principles across vastly different contexts. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius applied Stoic principles while leading an empire during plague and war, demonstrating how this philosophy functions at the highest levels of responsibility. His private journal, never intended for publication, reveals how deeply he integrated these practices into his leadership. Early Christian thinkers incorporated many Stoic ideas into their developing theology, particularly around virtue, providence, and the proper attitude toward external circumstances. The Stoic emphasis on internal character over external fortune aligned well with Christian values. During the Renaissance, Stoicism experienced a revival that influenced major figures, including Montaigne, who drew heavily on Seneca in developing his essays. This resurgence helped shape the humanist movement and its emphasis on virtue and reasoned judgment. The founders of the United States were deeply influenced by Stoic thought. George Washington had Joseph Addison's play Cato, based on the Stoic figure Cato the Younger, performed for his troops at Valley Forge to inspire courage and resilience. The Stoic emphasis on duty, integrity, and restraint profoundly shaped early American political philosophy. In the modern era, Stoicism has informed therapeutic approaches, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, which draws directly on the Stoic insight that our disturbances come not from events, but from our judgments about events. Albert Ellis, one of CBT's founders, explicitly acknowledged his debt to Epictetus. Military organizations worldwide have incorporated Stoic principles into their training. The U.S. Marines, Navy SEALs, and other elite units draw on Stoic concepts to develop psychological resilience and clear thinking under extreme stress. Business leaders increasingly apply Stoic principles to entrepreneurship and management. The Stoic emphasis on focusing only on what you can control, viewing obstacles as opportunities, and maintaining equanimity during volatility aligns perfectly with the challenges of modern business. This enduring influence across vastly different contexts and eras demonstrates the universal applicability of Stoic principles. While the specific challenges change, the fundamental human need for clear perception, emotional resilience, and purposeful action remains constant. Your personal path to Stoic strength. The theoretical understanding of Stoicism is valuable, but its true power emerges only through consistent practice. What follows is a practical framework for integrating these principles into your daily life, creating progressive development of mental clarity and emotional resilience. Begin with the most fundamental Stoic practice, the distinction between what you can and cannot control. For 1 week, consciously apply this perspective to every situation that causes you stress or anxiety. When facing a challenge, explicitly identify which aspects you can influence and which you cannot. Direct your mental energy exclusively toward the former. Next, develop the habit of examining your judgments before accepting them. When you notice a strong emotional reaction, pause and ask, what judgment am I making that's creating this feeling? Is this judgment accurate and helpful? Is there another perspective that might be equally or more valid? Practice negative visualization for a few minutes each morning. Contemplate the loss of something you value, your health, a relationship, a possession, an opportunity. Use this contemplation not to induce anxiety, but to generate appreciation for what you currently have and to mentally prepare for potential challenges. Incorporate voluntary discomfort into your routine. Begin with small practices. Taking a cold shower, fasting for 24 hours, having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or deliberately choosing the longer line at the store. Use these experiences to build confidence in your resilience. Establish a daily reflection practice, preferably in the evening. Review your actions, examining where you applied Stoic principles effectively and where you fell short. This isn't self-criticism, but honest assessment aimed at improvement. As Seneca advised, be your own harshest judge. Study the Stoic text directly. Begin with Epictetus and Cheirodin, a short handbook of practical advice. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, the private journal of a practicing Stoic, and Seneca's letters, which address specific challenges of daily life. Read not just for understanding, but for application. The ultimate advantage, mental sovereignty. The culmination of Stoic practice is the development of mental sovereignty. Complete ownership of your perceptions, judgments, values, and actions, regardless of external circumstances. This sovereignty represents the ultimate competitive advantage in any domain of life. The average person is unconsciously controlled by a complex web of influences: cultural conditioning, biological impulses, social pressure, emotional reactivity, cognitive biases, and manipulative external forces. They believe they're making independent choices while being subtly directed by factors they don't recognize. The practicing Stoic progressively liberates themselves from these influences, not by denying their existence, but by becoming conscious of them and developing the capacity to evaluate them before being moved by them. This creates genuine choice, where others experience only compulsion disguised as choice. Fourth, you create genuine freedom in your responses to life's challenges. While others react automatically based on conditioning, you develop the space to choose responses aligned with your values rather than your impulses. This sovereignty doesn't isolate you from others, but enhances your capacity for genuine connection. As Epictetus observed, whoever then would be free, let him wish nothing, let him decline nothing, which depends on others, else he must necessarily be a slave. The practical development of sovereignty involves continuous awareness of influences on your thinking, regular examination of your judgments, and deliberate choice of values rather than unconscious absorption of them. This isn't achieved in a single insight, but through progressive practice over time. As you develop this sovereignty, you experience a profound shift in your relationship with life. Challenges that once seemed overwhelming become opportunities for growth. Manipulations that once controlled you become transparent and ineffective. And most importantly, you gain the capacity to direct your life according to your deepest values, rather than external pressures or internal reactivity. This is the ultimate promise of Stoic philosophy. Not mere resilience or success, but true freedom. Not freedom from circumstance, which is impossible, but freedom within circumstance, which is the only freedom that matters. This practice aligns perfectly with modern recommendations for media literacy, but it goes deeper by addressing the psychological vulnerabilities that misinformation exploits. By developing awareness of how your emotions can be manipulated, you become far less susceptible to such manipulation. The practical application of these principles might include deliberately seeking viewpoints that challenge your existing beliefs, examining the evidence for claims rather than accepting them based on authority or social consensus, noticing when information triggers strong emotions and examining those reactions before acting on them, and focusing your attention on matters where your knowledge and action can make a difference. These practices create a mind that's extraordinarily difficult to manipulate or deceive. While others are increasingly polarized, reactive, and captured by information bubbles, the Stoic maintains independent judgment, emotional equilibrium, and the capacity to see beyond frames imposed by others. Part 6. The highest levels of Stoic practice. The development of unwavering purpose. The most advanced application of Stoic philosophy involves developing a clear, compelling purpose that guides all decisions and actions. This goes beyond mere goal setting to establishing a fundamental orientation toward life that creates extraordinary focus and meaning. Seneca observed, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable." This insight highlights how clarity of purpose transforms everything that happens into either a direct contribution to your aims or a test that develops the qualities needed to achieve them. The Stoic approach to purpose centers on aligning your aims with what they called virtue, excellence of character expressed through wisdom, courage, justice, and self-mastery. While specific goals might vary based on your circumstances and talents, the ultimate purpose remains constant: to express the highest human capacities through your actions. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. This sequence, first establishing who you aim to become, then determining the actions that create that person, provides extraordinary clarity for decision-making. This clarity of purpose creates remarkable advantages. First, eliminates the decision fatigue that plagues most people. When you know your fundamental aim, countless smaller decisions become automatic. Options that don't serve your purpose or express your values are immediately eliminated from consideration. Second, it provides resilience through difficulties. When you're pursuing a purpose larger than momentary comfort or pleasure, you willingly endure hardships that would deter those with lesser aims. As Viktor Frankl, influenced by Stoic thought, discovered, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Third, it creates immunity to distraction. When you're deeply engaged in meaningful purpose, the endless temptations of modern life lose their appeal. You become increasingly focused on what truly matters rather than what merely entertains. The practical development of purpose involves regular reflection on fundamental questions. What qualities do I want to embody? What contribution can I make that aligns with my deepest values? What would make my time on earth well spent? This isn't a one-time exercise, but an ongoing dialogue with yourself about what matters most. As your understanding deepens, your purpose becomes increasingly clear and compelling, creating extraordinary motivation and focus. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of his purpose daily. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This continuous reconnection with what matters most ensures that purpose remains a living force rather than a forgotten ideal. The cultivation of profound equanimity. The highest expression of Stoic practice is the development of equanimity, a state of inner balance that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. This isn't detachment or apathy, but a profound form of inner freedom that allows full engagement with life without being tyrannized by it. Epictetus who experienced slavery, disability, and exile, exemplified this quality. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. This position, fully engaged with what you can control while accepting what you cannot, creates remarkable psychological stability. This equanimity manifests in several distinctive qualities. First, you remain calm in crisis, able to think clearly and act decisively when others become paralyzed by fear or confusion. This capacity alone creates an enormous advantage in any challenging situation. Second, you experience success without unhealthy attachment. While you may pursue ambitious goals, your sense of worth isn't contingent on achieving them. This prevents the brittleness that often accompanies achievement-based identity. Third, you face loss without devastation. When setbacks occur, you feel appropriate sadness without being destroyed by it. This resilience allows faster recovery and wiser response to difficult circumstances. Fourth, you make decisions based on values rather than emotions. While you experience the full range of human feelings, you're not controlled by them. This creates choices aligned with your deeper principles rather than momentary impulses. The cultivation of equanimity involves continuous practice of the core Stoic disciplines, examining your judgments before accepting them, focusing exclusively on what you can control, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth, and regularly reminding yourself of the transience of all things. The integration of philosophy and life. The ultimate goal of Stoic practice isn't theoretical understanding, but practical wisdom expressed through action. As Epictetus bluntly stated, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. This integration of principles and behavior creates integrity in the deepest sense, wholeness of character. The Stoics were ruthlessly practical, judging philosophical ideas not by their cleverness, but by their capacity to create better human beings. As Seneca wrote, philosophy is no trick to catch the public. It is not devised for show. It is a matter not of words, but of facts. This focus on practical application distinguishes the Stoic approach from mere intellectual understanding. Many people know what they should do, but fail to align their actions with their knowledge. The Stoic disciplines systematically bridge this gap between knowing and doing. This integration manifests in several ways. First, principles are tested in daily life rather than merely contemplated. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to apply Stoic insights and refine your understanding through experience rather than theory. Second, philosophy becomes embodied in habits rather than remaining abstract concepts. Through deliberate practice, Stoic principles become automatic responses rather than ideas you must remember to apply. The integration of philosophy and life creates individuals of remarkable consistency and integrity. While others struggle with internal conflict between what they know and what they do, the practicing Stoic increasingly aligns knowledge and action, creating extraordinary clarity and purpose. This approach to adversity has been adopted by some of history's most resilient figures. James Stockdale credited Stoic philosophy with his survival through 7 years of torture as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Viktor Frankl, though not explicitly Stoic, demonstrated similar principles in surviving Nazi concentration camps. The practical application of this mindset transforms how you experience life's inevitable difficulties. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How can I use this?" Instead of being diminished by setbacks, you're strengthened by them. Instead of avoiding challenges, you recognize them as essential to your development. This approach creates individuals who are literally unstoppable, not because they never face obstacles, but because they incorporate obstacles into their path. As Nassim Taleb describes in his concept of anti-fragility, they don't merely survive stressors, but actively benefit from them. Part 5. Stoicism in the Modern World. The Stoic Antidote to Digital Distraction. The ancient Stoics couldn't have anticipated smartphones, social media, or the attention economy. Yet their philosophy provides the most effective countermeasure to modern digital distraction. Seneca warned, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere," though he was referring to the scattered reading habits of his contemporaries. This insight perfectly describes the fragmented attention that characterizes modern digital life. The Stoic approach begins with a fundamental insight. Your attention is your most valuable possession. What you consistently give your attention to shapes who you become. If you surrender it to algorithms designed to maximize engagement, you surrender control of your mind and development. The Stoic practice of continuous self-observation allows you to notice when your attention is being captured and redirected. Instead of mindlessly following the path of least resistance from notification to notification, you become aware of these patterns and can choose whether to continue them. Marcus Aurelius advised, "Most of what we say and do is unnecessary. Remove the superfluity, and you will have more time and less bother." This principle applies perfectly to digital consumption. By eliminating the non-essential, the mindless scrolling, the reflexive checking, the consumption of content that neither educates nor truly entertains, you reclaim vast amounts of mental energy and time. The Stoic emphasis on aligning actions with values provides a framework for healthier technology use. Rather than letting habit determine your digital consumption, you can ask, is this use of my attention advancing my most important goals? Is it aligned with my deepest values? The practice of voluntary discomfort applies directly to digital dependencies. By deliberately abstaining from social media, news consumption, or entertainment for periods of time, you break the psychological grip these platforms establish. You discover that the fear of missing out is largely unfounded, and that mental clarity increases dramatically during digital fasts. The practical application of Stoic principles to digital life might include establishing specific times for checking messages rather than responding to each notification, dedicating periods for deep work free from all digital interruption, regularly reflecting on whether your digital consumption patterns align with your values, and practicing periodic digital fasts to reset dependencies. These practices create a mind that uses technology intentionally rather than being used by it. While others are increasingly fragmented, reactive, and dependent on digital stimulation, the Stoic maintains the capacity for sustained attention, independent thought, and internal entertainment. Stoicism for leadership and influence. The Stoic philosophy provides a powerful framework for leadership that creates both exceptional results and meaningful impact. This approach centers on leading by example rather than authority, and influencing through character rather than technique. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. This willingness to prioritize the right action over appearances creates leaders of extraordinary integrity who inspire rather than merely direct. The Stoic leader begins with self-mastery. As Seneca observed, he who cannot command himself cannot command others. By developing emotional resilience, clear perception, and disciplined action, you create the foundation for genuine leadership influence. This self-mastery manifests in several distinctive qualities. First, the Stoic leader remains calm under pressure. When others panic or become reactive, they maintain perspective and clarity. This emotional stability creates confidence in those they lead and enables better decisions in crisis. Second, they focus on what they can control rather than wasting energy on factors beyond their influence. This practical orientation creates momentum and results where others become paralyzed by circumstances. Third, they define success in terms of the quality of their actions rather than external outcomes. This allows them to take principled stands and make difficult decisions without being unduly influenced by fear of failure or criticism. Fourth, they treat setbacks as opportunities for growth rather than disasters. This resilience creates cultures that innovate and adapt rather than avoid risk and assign blame. Perhaps most importantly, the Stoic leader focuses on developing character rather than merely acquiring skills or position. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. This focus on embodiment rather than mere advocacy creates authentic influence that transcends formal authority. The practical application of these principles transforms how you lead. Rather than relying on positional power, you cultivate personal influence through consistent demonstration of integrity, courage, and wisdom. Rather than motivating through incentives or fear, you inspire through personal example and clear purpose. This approach creates leaders who are respected rather than merely obeyed, who develop other leaders rather than creating dependence, and who build cultures of excellence and character rather than mere compliance. Stoicism for mental clarity in an age of propaganda. In an era of unprecedented information warfare, where attention is monetized and reality itself seems increasingly malleable, Stoic philosophy provides essential mental tools for maintaining clarity and independent thought. The Stoic practice of distinguishing between appearance and reality is particularly valuable in this context. As Epictetus instructed, things themselves don't hurt or hinder us, nor do other people. How we view these things is another matter. This practice creates the habit of questioning how situations are framed rather than accepting a frame. When confronted with emotionally charged information, the Stoic automatically asks, what are the bare facts here, separated from interpretation? What judgments am I being encouraged to make? What emotions is this information designed to trigger? This mental stance creates immediate distance from manipulative content. While others are swept along by emotional contagion, the Stoic maintains their position as an independent observer and thinker. The principles and practices you've explored represent the most battle-tested system for developing mental clarity, emotional resilience, and purposeful action ever created. This isn't a theoretical framework, but a practical methodology proven effective across thousands of years and countless challenging circumstances. The Stoics didn't develop these practices in comfortable isolation, but in the crucible of real-world challenges: war, exile, imprisonment, political upheaval, and the ever-present hardships of ancient life. They weren't theorizing about resilience, but creating it in themselves and those they influenced. The power of this approach lies in its comprehensive nature. It addresses every aspect of the mental landscape: your perceptions, judgments, desires, aversions, actions, and purposes. Each component reinforces the others, creating a complete system for mental development rather than isolated techniques. Modern psychology continues to validate what the Stoics discovered through experience and observation. Cognitive behavioral therapy, logotherapy, positive psychology, and mindfulness practices all contain elements the Stoics identified millennia ago. Science is catching up to what Stoic practitioners have always known. The implementation of these principles creates individuals who are increasingly immune to manipulation, resistant to distraction, clear in purpose, resilient in adversity, and sovereign in their own minds. In a world of accelerating change and mounting pressure, these qualities become increasingly valuable and increasingly rare. This is not self-help, but self-transformation. Not temporary motivation, but fundamental reprogramming of how you perceive and respond to reality. Not a quick fix, but a lifelong practice that yields compound returns on your investment. The question isn't whether these principles work. History has demonstrated their effectiveness across vastly different contexts and challenges. The question is whether you will apply them consistently enough to experience their transformative power in your own life. The Stoics understood that philosophy isn't a spectator sport. As Epictetus challenged his students, if you didn't learn these things in order to demonstrate them in practice, what did you learn them for? Knowledge without application creates no value. The path forward is clear. Begin with the fundamentals: the dichotomy of control, the examination of judgments, the practice of negative visualization. Apply these consistently in daily life, progressively adding more advanced practices as your capacity develops. This isn't about becoming perfect, but about continuous improvement. As Seneca advised, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one. Men learn as they teach. The development of an undefeated mind is the most valuable project you can undertake. It creates advantages in every domain of life, while liberating you from the psychological suffering that plagues most people. It enables you to maintain clarity when others become confused, resilience when others become defeated, and purpose when others become lost. This isn't just about performance or achievement, though it enhances both. It's about developing the internal qualities that make life worth living regardless of external circumstances. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." The ancient Stoics have handed down a system of extraordinary power. The question now is what you will do with it. Will you merely understand these principles, or will you embody them? Will you admire this philosophy, or will you live it? The choice is always within your control.